Are you that YouTuber with 7 followers? I need a new host stand. Valerie, 45, West 45.
Whoa, extremely rude and totally uncalled for. It's more like 700,000,000 or
Did I catch a niner in there?
Yeah, so what don't you like about it?
What don't I like about it? It fucking spins, it's tiny, it's useless, antiseptic wipe, bullshit, get it out.
Well, I'm not gonna lie, I feel somewhat abused, but I think I just got my first client. Let's go. Here's a bit of background on the restaurant. It's located in the heart of Midtown Manhattan. They opened their doors in 2018 and by some miracle, they persevered through the hardships of COVID. It's new American cuisine and this place is just visually stunning. Now that I gathered all the inspiration I'll need for this project, I'll head back to my shop and get started. Alright guys, I'm back home in my shop and I'm ready to kick this project off. I need to start with milling all the lumber and I have a lot of it. I have around 150 board feet to mill and I only have a small lunchbox planer, so this is gonna be a bitch. But I really don't mind it. There's something oddly satisfying about watching rough lumber transform into something square and clean and like a finished product. It's kind of like watching cleaning videos, like the before and afters, which I don't because I'm not weird. Oh yeah. I lied, I'm a little weird. But in my defense, that video had 3 million views. Like, I'm not alone here. Going into this, the client had a couple of requests. First being, make it dark. Like, darker than walnut. They want it not black, but darker than walnut. Number 2, don't break the bank. This is just a hostess stand and it's gonna get beat up. That brings me to number 3. Make it super durable. This restaurant in particular is very high volume, so there's lots of people in and out, so it's gonna take some abuse over the years. With all this information, I think the best wood to use for this project is ash. It's cheap, it's durable, it stains really well due to its porous wood fibers, and it's one of the hardest wood species out there.
Pause.
When the client asked me to build this, I was pretty much given creative freedom on the design, which is awesome for me because I could basically build whatever I want, so it'll make building this way more enjoyable for me. And on the other hand, if they don't like it, well, I'm screwed, and that sucks really bad for me and for them. But I wasn't really worried because I knew exactly what I wanted to do with this project. Their restaurant has a classic New York Art Deco style to it, and I'll just carry that over into this project. So my first thought was New York architecture in that Art Deco period. And the first building that came to mind, which is one of the most iconic buildings in New York, is the Chrysler Building. Fun fact about the Chrysler Building, it's the tallest brick building in the world. Or was it the city? I'm pretty sure it's the world. I'm gonna say it's the world. This project is going to consist of 2 main parts, the frames and the cabinets. The cabinets, I'm just going to do like 4 cabinets in an L-shaped formation. And then for the frames, I'll do that in another, like I'll do the L shape for that and wrap it around the cabinets. But I'm not going to film the cabinets being built because it's just boxes and that's not fun to watch. And there's a million other videos on the internet that build boxes. So I'm going to stick to just building the frames. That'll be what the customer sees, so I want that to be what you guys see the most. But I'll use the Chrysler Building to draw inspiration into the frames of this project. When I was looking at the Chrysler Building, 2 things about that building really stood out to me. First was their lobby and their lobby lights. They're just extremely unique. You could see here that the fixture is very tall and thin, and it has all these different types of patterns. Some are staggered, some are in like this formation with a triangle. I feel like I'm a referee in the NFL right now. Illegal formation, number 74. So I'm going to incorporate that triangle design feature on the front panels. It'll be the first thing the customer sees when they walk in. And the other design feature is on the exterior of the building. If you look at the very top of the Chrysler Building, you'll see these overlapping arches that basically go all the way to the antenna, which is the top of the building. So I think incorporating those arches into the frames and the lighting in that formation will tie into their Art Deco theme really well. And now that I have those frames assembled and glued up, I can move on to building the base. I think the best way of going about making the bases is to make a template. That way I can make as many as I need and they'll all be exactly the same. Well, they'll be exactly the same as the template, which makes them all the same. And as I mentioned earlier, the base is going to have a gradual arch that'll emulate the exterior of the Chrysler building. To make the template, I'll use a scrap piece of MDF, and I'll measure out the width of the far 2 points. In this case, it's 22 inches. And then I'll drive a screw on both of those measurements, and I'll use those screws as a fulcrum point. And you just press the ruler through until you reach your desired height, and then trace the outline. You could use anything floppy. I just so happen to have a floppy metal ruler that was 36 inches long. And just like that, there's a perfect arch. I hope I explained that well. I feel like I didn't, but you guys are only seeing the best take. Just wrap your head around that. This is the best take out of like 400 that I just did. So I'm sorry if I butchered that, but that's how you make an arch. Then once the line is traced, I could take it over to my bandsaw and cut that shape out. And once I'm done at the bandsaw, I could take the template over to my belt sander and essentially erase the trace line that I drew. And now that I have the template done, I can transfer this to my project material and just repeat the process. The only difference here is that I'll be using a flush trim bit and not my belt sander. Shit. Okay, since the arch of the base is round and the light fixture's round, it's only fitting that I add a round over everywhere I can. And I'll do that on all the inside edges of the frames. Yeah, so if you thought I butchered the explanation of how to make an arch, just wait until you see this. I need to figure out a way to attach the base to the frame. I know that sounds like common sense, but the catch is I want there to be a slight gap between the two. Almost like the frames are hovering on top of the base. And that brings me to the good old, not at all expensive domino joiner. It has a depth stop feature that controls the depth of the plunge depending on the size domino you use. So in my case, I have an 8mm by 40mm domino. I would set the depth stop to half the length of the domino, which is 20mm, and then it'll sit flush. But I don't want it to sit flush. I want there to be a slight gap. So what I'll do is adjust the depth stop to 20mm for the frames and 15mm for the base. That'll give me a 5mm gap, which is roughly 3/16 for all you imperial folk out there like myself. And that'll give me a nice shadow line. And then when I'm all done, I could just set it back to 20 when I want to join the frames together flush. So I really like how this thing came out. It's really cool. I did make a mistake, an oopsie. I of course made a mistake and I have two options. I'm not sure what I'm gonna do. I did it where this frame was on the inside of this frame, so like here. When I did it like that, it was very ugly. I didn't like it at all. Also, another thing is, it's the leg end grain and then its frame is long grain. So it looks really bad. So I have two options. I can either cut like an 1/8 inch strip and just glue it along, sand it, maybe round it over, or I can make 45-degree miters and make it look really good, or make it look really bad because I've never done it before. All right, so yesterday I made some 45-degree cuts on the table saw. At the very end of the day, I guess I didn't press the record button, but I used my track saw to make one cut because when I first built the panels, I just glued two together. I kind of jumped the gun on it, which made it way too wide for my table saw. So I used my track saw and the blade wasn't long enough to cut through. It left just a little bit and I could probably just sand it off, but I don't know. Like, I don't want to take the chance. This is my first client. Like, I want the 45 to come out really nice. So what I think I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna cut the two panels in half, so basically just like down the middle, and then the panel that I need to cut the 45 on will be small enough to fit on my table saw. And then I'll just re-domino and re-glue it, and I think that'll be a lot better. I have to use the domino anyway on the 45, so I might as well just do it while it's out. All right, that is a much better cut. If you're watching this and you see this and you're like, a domino joiner, he's not a real woodworker. No shit, I know that. That's why I got it, because I'm not. I stink. I need all the help I can get. I got all the miters and the dominoes done. I want to assemble this thing just to get an idea of what it looks like. I don't even know what it looks like altogether. That's cool, man. I have the thing dry fit and like assembled, and it looks great. I really like it. The miters came out super good. Everything came out really good. Really, all I have to do is put the panels on and sand. Oh, and then I gotta do finish. Just when you think you're done. I'm enjoying it, don't get me wrong. This is like all I think about, all I wanna do every single day. When I can't do it, I'm sad. But there's parts of this that aren't fun. Sanding is one of them, finishing's not so bad, but sanding. All right, I have the frames dry fit and ready for glue up, but before I glue the frames up, I wanna start making the panel design that'll sit inside the frames. You remember that. So in order for this design to resemble the lobby light fixture, I'll need to rip a bunch of thin strips to 3/4 inches wide at the table saw. And after a full work day of ripping thin strips, I can head over to the router table and round over the 2 top edges of the thin strip. I'll use a roundover bit and take a pass on each side of the strip. That'll give me a roundover on each side that'll give me that bullnose look I'm looking for. And then I can just go to the miter saw and make that decorative miter, which I'll do about like 31 to 32 degrees, somewhere around there. I think 45 is a little too harsh. I don't think 22.5 is enough. So I think 31.25 is like that sweet spot. My idea was to lay the strips down and evenly space them out, which honestly I thought it was a great idea. Thought it'd look really good. So, what do you think?
No.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. Ew. So yeah, the triangle design was not mine, but I have to give the credit to my wife. She was the one that came up with that design. But now that I have the design installed on the panels, I can move forward with installing the rest of the panels in the frames. I'll just be using like Type-On 3 glue and some brad nails to secure it. And then I can finally start gluing these frames together. I probably just did a horrible job of capturing that. Sorry. All right, so I have a slight problem. That's my problem. The frames are still in 2 different sections and they need to be in one. I held off gluing these 2 sections together for as long as possible, but now I can't really move forward without gluing them together. I held off because if I glued them all together at once, my shop's kind of small and that would just overcrowd my shop. And while I wait for the glue to set up, I'll start by making a top plate that'll wrap around the frames. This will just be a spot for people to put their keys or their wallet or cell phone while they talk to the host or hostess. I'll begin by cutting a dado on the bottom section of the top plate. Then I can cut the miters on the top plate to match the miters on the frames. Then mortise out some dominoes on the 45-degree miters. And then I just need to glue it up, which I did off camera because I forgot to record it. I don't know why. I also forgot to dry fit it, so I have no idea if this is even gonna fit. Yes, God, that shit fit. The last detail I'm going to install is a piece of trim underneath that top plate. The customer and I originally picked out this trim, but when I received it, I noticed the quality was terrible. I honestly don't even think it was wood. It was that shitty. I also was worried that it would cheapen the look of the project. So I'll just make my own, which I should have done from the beginning. And I'll do this over at the router table using a cove box bit, making a cove down the center of the trim. And then I'll head over to the table saw and rip it right down the middle, and that'll give me this detail. It's a classy and simple look that won't take away from the rest of the piece. I'll attach a trim using a fast setting glue and my 23 gauge pin nailer. This will give it a much cleaner look. It's not structural, so I don't see the need for an 18 gauge brad nail. And honestly, the main reason why I'm doing this is because I don't want to put wood filler in the holes. It's a laziness thing. I don't want to take the time to add the wood filler, sand it. Forget that. Wow, captivating. God, sanding sucks. Now that I'm done sanding, I can move on to staining this. I'll be using two Rubio Monaco products, first being their pre-color, which is basically just a stain, and then their oil 2C, which is the finish and the sheen and the protection that you get. The darkest brown I can find on Rubio Monaco's website was cashmere brown. And unfortunately, that alone just isn't dark enough. You could just see how light it came out on this scrap piece of ash. To make it darker, I bought some Rubio Monaco Intense Black to add to the brown to darken it up. I'll just add a little by little until I get to the desired look that I'm looking for. I first started out with a 4:1 ratio, that's what you're seeing here. And although it's much darker, it's just not the look I'm going for yet. I want it to be a little bit more darker, so I'm gonna mix it up to like a 3:1 ratio, and that's what you see here. And that'll give you the exact color I'm looking for. I was worried because I never mixed stains before. I know you can mix them, but I've never mixed Rubio Monaco stains, and I wasn't sure how it would look, and it came out perfect. All right, so I'm running into a major issue right now. It's literally giving me heart palpitations. You could see here that some areas are really light and some are really dark. The only thing I can think of is that there's leftover glue residue that I didn't sand well enough, and it's not allowing the stain to penetrate the wood. The only way to fix this, and I hate myself for having to do this, but I'm gonna have to go back and re-sand it. I'll take the stain off to bare wood, and then I'll go around the rest of the frames that I haven't stained yet and just go over them one more time, just to be precautionary.
I'm reading Don't Kill Myself books.
So that about wraps it up. This thing is done. It's built, it's sanded, and it's finished. All that's left is to deliver it. Like I said, this is my first client, and to be honest, it's kind of an odd feeling selling something that you made. I know it's like the most basic and common form of our society is someone makes something, someone buys something, but I've never sold anything to a customer before. Like this all started out as just rough lumber, and now it's a finished piece of furniture that'll be one of the main focal points in a restaurant that gets tens of thousands of customers annually. Like that's wild to me, that's so cool. I guess what I'm saying is I feel blessed. And while I'm on this soapbox of a rant, I'd like to take some of this time to thank the team over at Valerie. You see, that rude boy in the beginning of the video,
Hey, are you that YouTuber with 7 followers?
he's actually quite a sweetheart, and I've known him for a few years. And none of this would have happened without their boss, which happens to be my wife.
Hey.
So I want to say thank you, and then I'm very appreciative for this opportunity. Panels inside of the, I still need to put the, wow dude. To do that, I'll and I don't speak French, so I can't tell you what that is in Imperial. I just know metric numbers. So prior to this project, I never, what I'm gonna do is, and then this thing's gonna look sick. It's gonna be, I hope, sick. I hope it's gonna be sick. It's probably not gonna be sick.